The following podcast contains spoilers for the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. You have been warned.
Well, what is up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of KFR News Radio. This is your host, Miguel Migusto. Oh, wait, I did it again. I am you, and you are me.
Is that you, John Wayne?
Oh, is that you? Oh,
I'd like to apologize to everyone who's ever learned United Kingdom English that my accents are terrible. But if you listen to us, you know my accents are terrible for every accent other than my specific accent.
We just out here doing the best we can, okay?
We out here doing the best we can. That's true.
Speaking of the best we can, Mike, did you see anything in this definitely last week of us recording?
I saw a movie called Jekyll's Inferno, which is also the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll, which is our film for this week, Glenjamin Button. I don't think you said your name.
Oh, but I can. Glenjamin Button.
And I'm Miguel Magusto. So yeah, I only watched the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll for reasons that you and I know. And
Yes,
no one will
but
ever
of
know.
course.
Yes.
I watched a movie called Ginger Snaps, and it's not what you think it's about. No, it is not about a man making ginger snaps and them falling apart.
That was one of the options we had out of the three for the streaming roulette last week, wasn't it?
Yes. It's about a teenage girl snapping mentally and physically. She goes fucking insane.
Is
And
her
I
name
learned-
Ginger?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I will say I give a little creativity points for that. But I learned way more about the little female anatomy going on in this movie than I ever wished to. And it is unapologetic for it. And I say good for it. But overall, man, I did not enjoy this movie that much. I think I gave it like 2.5, which means I stood it, longer than I expected. But dear Lord, honestly, can I move on from that? The female anatomy is back in my brain, and I can't not think of it anymore.
Yes, as is the curse. I don't know what I'm saying.
Well, actually, yeah.
So yeah, but that's I guess nice and short. We don't have any news for this week because reasons that you and I know. So I guess we should just get into the Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll.
This is Dr. Jekyll, one man with two faces and a mind split in two.
Will we ever know who we really are? Who are you, Kitty? Who are you?
Dawn Adams as his shameless wife, unaware that her husband was two men, both of them watching her jealously.
I don't deserve you, Kitty.
You don't. I deserve you. I deserve nothing better than you.
Christopher Lee as the lover who shared her deception and her danger. Here is the cold face of hate and the hot face of passion.
Dr. Henry Jekyll experiments with scientific means of revealing the hidden, dark side of man and releases a murderer from within himself.
Damn, son. Did
Honestly,
you practice that?
I put my golden teeth in for that one, because that was... wow.
It is directed by Terrence Fisher, written by Wolf Mankiewicz, no relation to Herman J. Mankiewicz. It's spelled differently, completely, actually. And based on the novel The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. It is starring Paul Massey, Dawn Adams, Christopher Lee, and David Kossoff. Kossoff.
Maybe it's like really fast accented cursive. Cursive. Anyway, that was stupid. Moving on.
That was very stupid. So yeah, it's essentially the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, just done in a super posh British way.
I'm gonna jump right into it if you don't mind me doing
Go
this.
for it. You do it, sir.
This had a little twist to how the usual Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde goes. Obviously, there's a side of this man, Dr. Jekyll, that, maybe it's a little bit darker side. Maybe for some reason, like in this movie, maybe a little bit more sexy side, maybe a little bit more scandalous side.
Damn.
Yeah, I liked so far in this movie, I liked that it didn't turn into like some crazy monster or anything like that. It turned into this really, he turned into a pretty boy. He lost his beard, his eyebrows got a little bit of a trim, and, he's completely unrecognizable. But he becomes
Can
this
we just
more...
talk about how fake the beard, eyebrows, and hair
it's
were?
pretty bad.
It's so bad when he's Dr. Jekyll.
But yeah, it's kind of, it feels like a different take. I mean, obviously he's still like a murderer and everything, but he's just this posh, murderous asshole.
Yeah,
he just becomes.
He's not a murderer for murder's sake like Mr. Hyde is, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. He murders for vengeance and stuff, and jealousy. So like, there's motives behind his murders. I can't remember if the book is like that. It's been a while since I've read it. And yes, I know what you're thinking. He reads? Yes.
What?
When I was a kid, I was obsessed with classic horror books. So, what Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde was one of the ones I read. But yeah, I agree with you. It's not your typical like Jack the Ripper-esque type thing, because you always imagine Mr. Hyde with like a top hat, kind of like Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
I don't remember if it's like inspired by Jack the Ripper, but that's how I remember him. So seeing him as just like this pretty boy that could get any woman he wanted to if he wanted to was an interesting take. I was not expecting.
Oh man, I was going to say something, and then my life flashed before my eyes, because I swear, because what's his name, Christopher Lee, as well. He was fantastic and very posh and very handsome and very young in this as well.
Yes.
Both really just devastating men to the woman community.
Jesus Christ.
At least in this movie.
Yeah. Weird. The thing about 60s horror movies, we've talked about this a little bit before, how they can be like hit and miss whether or not they go with the time. They also, especially if they're trying to go for like more wider audiences, have really weird decisions musically. And the opening credits for this just got the most ridiculous music. Like, it sounds like it should be in Sound of Music, not in Dr. Jekyll, a Dr. Jekyll movie. It's
the exact same way when there's the snake dancing thing too. It's just kind of like above and beyond what it feels like it should be.
Yeah.
I completely understand what you're talking about, sir.
Yeah, but with this being a horror movie, there was a lot more scenes where people were just literally talking. Like, I kind of found myself. I want to stress I didn't hate this movie, but I got bored a lot while watching it. Yeah. And I think a lot of it is just that posh lifestyle. Like, fancy parties in any movie that I see always seem so boring to me, where people are just like dancing the same. Everyone's dancing the same dance to the same music, and
they did show a lot of the lucrative dance, like the scenes, and just the they showed a lot of the party scenes, specifically towards the end of the movie when some shit's going down. Is where everybody's doing like the can for like 5 to 10 minutes for some reason.
It feels like it should have been like a medium length movie, like maybe 45 minutes, and they just padded the shit out of it. Because there's definitely not enough there for me to really be that intrigued with it. I feel like I can't remember any of them, but I feel like when I was a kid, I probably saw better adaptations of Dr. Jekyll, Mrs. Hyde, Mr. Hyde. But
that's a transformation.
I will give it credit for definitely doing something a little bit different from the other stories. I think the acting in it was pretty good, especially Paul Massey. He did a good job at playing two very clearly different characters, to the point where if his Dr. Jekyll did not have the fake beard and fake hair and fake eyebrows, I would still be able to notice that he is a different person. So the fact that they just added all that fake hair and stuff just made it kind of laughable. But
that was another contrast that I liked so much about the movie. Obviously not the makeup and stuff, but with a very posh Mr. Hyde and everything, you've got the opposite of that, and Dr. Jekyll is kind of just this. He's not like an old brittle man, but he's kind of just a recluse, and he stays in his room, and he's just very deep voice and kind of just doesn't really like anybody. He hates the exterior life. He doesn't know why she goes to all those parties, and then
introvert versus extrovert.
Yeah,
really.
And then he transforms, and he's this very posh man who just wants what he wants, and if he can't have it, then why should anybody else? And I think that contrast is really what seals the deal for me.
I would agree.
This movie, the
100%.
acting is really good. Especially, we know me, I don't really like classic movies all that much, to be completely honest. But yeah, I thought this was great, specifically for those two things. Even with an hour and a half, like you said, it did feel like it ran a little bit too long.
I actually
specifically with the party scenes, like you were saying.
Yeah.
But I really liked all the stuff where Mr. Hyde just trying to convince his way into things and stuff like that. And that was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, I actually started watching this at like 1.5 speed that you can do on YouTube, because I was just like, okay, they're just dancing.
Wow.
So like that's how bad. Granted, I was extremely tired when I watched it, and I watched it the day before I thought we were going to record. We recorded a day after we were originally going to record. Mm-hmm. So, and I knew that day I had a lot of stuff to do. So like I knew I had to watch it that night, and I was just getting so tired that it just like started fast forwarding. Not fast forwarding, but watching it at a faster speed.
Yeah.
I still got everything, but like the pacing was faster because of that. But it's a weird movie because it feels like it's definitely a film of its time. Like I don't think it's this film would not be. This film is not risque today, but like I still found myself when they said there was a woman that used the word bitch in it, and it was 1960, and I was just like, oh wow,
that was such a great execution of the way she said bitch too. It was so funny.
I don't know like the history behind this, but if this was the first time bitch was used in a film, film that was approved by the censors, of course, I would completely believe it. And the woman who says bitch, she had to have known, and she's like, I'm going to sell the shit out of this bitch.
Yeah.
But
because someone bought that shit immediately, and it was me, 60 years later.
Yeah, but it definitely it definitely pushes the envelope for 1960 England, including, there's a scene where Mr. Hyde and Paul Allen, played by Christopher Lee, just straight up go to an opium den. Mm-hmm. They're just doing opium.
Just doing that thing out.
Just doing it. Just smoking it and just relaxing. And it's just...
They're just vibing, man.
If I didn't know more about the history of film, I would be like, yeah, this is nothing. But with being 1960... and being like a English-speaking movie, which, American and English audiences were always the most stuck up out of all classic film audiences. I was just like, damn, they're getting away with something here.
They're doing it. They're doing it right on up.
Actually, 1960, this is the first time that a toilet was seen in a film, too, and it's Psycho. Psycho was the first toilet.
Holy shit.
In 1960. So that's, that if that doesn't tell you how repressed Americans and English people were in 1960, I don't know what will.
Yeah. I'm struggling, honestly, to try to think of more things to talk about. It's not... There's enough there that everything we talked about was kind of the basis of what we hit. I think the only really thing that I really have left, honestly, is talking about how Christopher Lee, this is like one of his favorite roles that he's ever done. I
believe it.
Which, I mean, he was really good at it. And I'm telling you, man, he's a danger to the women's society. He's so goddamn handsome.
Well, I mean, James Bond is based off of Christopher Lee. Did you know that?
I honestly,
Is it
I think I
Christopher
do.
Lee? Is it Christopher Lee or is it oh man, it's based off of someone famous.
I also know this is the second adaptation for the what am I reading here? It's the second Hammer adaptation of Robert Louis Stevens' novella, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I'm very curious if The Ugly Duckling, or how I would feel about watching that. And then, of course, Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, which was not far off of Mrs. Hyde that you said earlier. I kind of do want to see those movies and see how this kind of like trilogy, not that it is like an actual trilogy, but like see how those are.
Yeah, definitely.
And I can't imagine them being that long either in comparison.
Yeah, so I couldn't find out if it was definitively if it was based off of Christopher Lee. It's either based off of Christopher Lee or Roald Dahl. James Bond is, and or a combination, because I'm sure it's a combination of a few people. But yeah, just sorry to kind of go back on that. But
you're good.
Yeah, I saw that this was kind of a trilogy too, and it would be interesting to watch them. The one thing I was really missing from this that is in the book that I kind of wish that they had kept was there's a little bit of it, but there's not too much of a struggle for control between Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, where that is a huge part of the book, is, you know, the two personalities struggling for control. Yeah. And that's in this, when Mr. Hyde's in control, there is no back and forth. He's
pretty much in control almost
and when
the whole
Dr.
time.
Jekyll's in control, there is no struggle. But every other adaptation has had that struggle, which is really an interesting part of it. And I feel like it could have added to the pacing so it didn't feel so long had they done something like that. But overall, it's a decent film. I do think it struggles with its pacing. But, you know, what movie in the 60s didn't?
Absolutely. But yeah, that's kind of all I've got to talk about, to be honest.
Yeah, same here. A nice, quick episode.
Very quick.
That brings us to our judgment for this film, The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. Has to be unanimous decision whether or not it goes on the shelf, boy, with the likes of Apostle and Handmaiden. This was a streaming one, so either of us could go first.
I can go first. I can talk about it a little bit.
You go first. You do it.
I know how you feel about it, but I'm kind of struggling over here. I do have to say, where I didn't honestly love it enough to want to put it on the shelf, as far as like a whole as a movie, I did like the performances, and I did like the concept of how he became like this posh, very jealous man, instead of just like this, decrepit, wanting to murder everybody type thing. Yeah. And obviously, I didn't read, unlike this person who did read, like you. So I don't really know what the original content is like. I'm just based off of movies after like 1990. But yeah, I really liked it just for that and the acting. But I don't know if that's enough for me to want to put it on the shelf specifically.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for me, the pacing is a big killer here, especially at only not even 90 minutes. It's 88 minutes long. If you can't have a well-paced movie under 90 minutes, even if it's a fine movie, I don't think it's deserving of mention. So while there's great performances and it is an interesting take on Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I would say that it does not go on the shelf.
Yes. Well, there it is.
Yes, so The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll does not make it on the shelf with the likes of Apostle and Handmaiden. That brings us to our plugs for this week. Glenn.
Oh,
what are you going to plug?
Wow. So, as we all know, we now have a TikTok. So, of course, as one has a TikTok, one has to scroll on TikTok every now and then, which, damn, what has my life come to? But sometimes they do have little golden nuggets waiting for you in this riverbed, and I'm just a little old pioneer here. I found basically what seems to be a podcast also, like ours, but probably a little bit better and more resourceful with how they do things. It's called The Confused Breakfast. They, at least on TikTok, they seem to have a lot of fun facts and everything about movies from the past, and like here, the first one that I come across is Terminator 2. Like, that's actually one of the first little videos that I found of these guys. Is they were talking about just what is it? What is it? It's not the T. Is it the T-1000? And how like the running scene and how that actor trained like a motherfucker just to not breathe through his mouth and just to breathe through his nose. Yeah.
I forget what he is.
I can't remember the actual name, but they were talking about that and like went into detail about it and how cool it was. And I've since then I've caught many of their other videos where they just talk about other things like that.
Confirmed, it was a T-1000.
Ah, look at me go, pat on the back. But yeah, they seem to be really cool, really like know what they're talking about and everything like that. So I specifically am going to be checking out their podcast that's on Spotify. Obviously, like I said, they're on TikTok. I think they're even on YouTube and yada yada. What else? But they're called The Confused Breakfast.
They all have their lunch thing. Andrew's is like one of the funniest because he's just pulling out sandwiches and apples and bananas and
carton of milk,
a whole bag of potato chips.
It's like a magician's hat, man. It's just like
there's a moment where he's holding his sandwich and like everyone's looking at him behind him, and then a piece of salad or a piece of lettuce or something. It's like pure cinema. I bet John Hughes is like, that's it, we fucking got it.
Fun. My plug, I've plugged this before, but I have fun with it, and season 4 just ended for this. It is on the YouTube channel Watcher, and it is Puppet History. If you like history, you'll like this. If you like little puppets, you'll like this. If you like jokes, you'll like this. This season was really funny because throughout the first 3 seasons, they've had like little bits of lore where the puppet rants about his arch nemesis, which is a genie. In this season, they did not, or did they? Is the real question.
Who knows?
They said they didn't, but they may have. Who knows? And it's just a fun little arc. I don't know if it was planned from season 1 for this to happen, but with season 4, they really kind of brought it all together. So season 4 of Puppet History. If you haven't seen any of the Puppet History, just watch them from beginning to end. It's all really interesting. And you could, hear about how everyone says the Founding Fathers would not have forced vaccinations on people. Well, George Washington did. He forced the soldiers to get the smallpox vaccine, which wasn't a vaccine at the time. It was an inoculation is what they called. Anyway, fun little tidbits, not all American.
People just like to think they know everything, even though they might
do.
Not. It's
they
crazy.
Do. Yeah. So Puppet History on the Watcher YouTube channel. It's a real fun time.
All right.
And you might feel things too. Who knows?
Okay. Ready, everybody? Welcome, one and all, to the Season 4 finale of Puppet History. Today, as always, we'll be taking an ever-winding look at yet another chapter in the heavy book we call History, while our guests ruthlessly compete for the coveted title of History Master. I'm your beloved host, the Professor. Thank you.
My heartstrings.
Yes.
Or puppet strings.
Ooh, yes. So that is... Those are our plugs for this week. That brings us to our assignment for next week for week 4 of the Spooktacular. Ooh. We're coming back to me halfway through the Spooktacular. Coming back to me. In last week's episode, I talked about how I really like Universal picture monster movies from the 30s and 40s. I watched Wolfman. I've been obsessed with Frankenstein ever since I was a kid. When I was a kid, I was Frankenstein for literally like 4 Halloweens.
You had the height. You did.
I had the height. I just like Frankenstein. I like the story. I think, the misunderstood monster is a very interesting concept. But there's one movie from the Frankenstein lore that I had not watched yet, and it is on Criterion Channel, and that is The Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh.
So that is my pick. Mary Shelley reveals the main characters of her novel survived. Dr. Frankenstein, goaded by an even madder scientist, builds his monster a mate. directed by James Whale, who also did the first Frankenstein, so there's that. It is written by William Hurlbut, John L. Balderston, and then suggested the original story by Mary Shelley. So she didn't write it, but she suggested it in 1816.
So she's a producer, huh?
No, she's just a writing credit because she came up with the idea for it. It is starring Boris Karloff, Elsa Lanchester, Colin Clive, and Valerie Hobson, and that is going to be on Criterion Channel, The Bride of Frankenstein from 1935. A nice 75 minutes, so not too long.
Oh, nice and crisp.
Yeah, nice and crisp. So, yes, that is my pick. That is our assignment for next week.
Perfect.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for listening. As always, you can check out our website at www.keystonefilmreview.com. On Instagram, we are Keystone_film_review. Twitter, Keystone_film. Facebook, Keystone Film Review. YouTube, Keystone Film Review. TikTok, Keystone Film Review. And on Letterboxd, I'm Mike, KFR.
And I am Glenn, KFR.
And that will do it until next week when we see the monster himself get married. He's going to get hitched.
Everyone has to have a love in their life.
Where do you think they're going to go on their honeymoon?
Hell.
No. That was darker than expected. Bye.
Bye.